it's time for me to talk about one of my favorite features in InDesign. It's not a particularly flashy feature, but it's incredibly helpful to anyone who needs to write or edit text inside of InDesign. And that feature is Story Editor. It's like having a little word processor built right into InDesign. Let me show you. I'm working with my Javaco magazine file from the exercise files, and I'm going to jump to page 6 with the Command-J or Control-J on Windows, press 6, hit Enter, and there I am. I'm going to edit this text, so I'm going to double-click on the text that I want to edit, and that changes to the Type tool automatically for me. Now I'll press Command-4 or Control-4 on Windows, and that zooms to 400%. It's just easier to see on screen, so it's easier to edit, right? Well, the problem is that editing this is going to be a disaster because it's a long story, it's in a wide column, and so I'm going to have to scroll to the right and scroll to the left and up and down. It's just annoying. So instead of editing it like this, I'm going to go to the Edit menu and I'm going to choose Edit in Story Editor, or press Command-Y or Control-Y on Windows. This opens the Story Editor window, which just shows the text and pretty much nothing else. There is one significant problem with the Story Editor window, however, and that's that the font that Adobe chose is just really annoying to read on screen. So I'm going to change that. I'll go to the Preferences menu, which on the Macintosh is under the InDesign menu, and on Windows it's under the Edit menu. And I'll go down to Story Editor Display. Here I can tell InDesign how I want the Story Editor window to look. The first thing I'm going to do is just change this font to something that looks nicer, like Georgia, and I'll make it even a little bit bigger so it's easier for me to read on screen. I could change the line spacing I wanted to 1.5 space or double spacing, and I could change the color and the color of the background if I wanted to. I'm just going to leave it alone the way it is, and I'll click OK. To me, this is much easier to read and edit in, but you can choose any font you want. Now the Story Editor window shows me just a few clues about what's going on in my document. First of all, it does show in the left column which paragraph style is applied to the paragraph. I'm going to talk about paragraph styles in a later chapter. It also shows me which words are bold and which words are italic. Like this heading down here is in bold, but it won't show any other formatting other than bold and italic. It won't show me kerning or size differences or any of the fancy things that InDesign will do. The other thing I see in this window are these numbers along the side, like a ruler. In fact, that is a ruler. It's a vertical measure ruler. We're currently set to picas as our vertical measurement, and so I know by this number, that number is 8.0, that means the last word on this line is 8 picas down from the top of the text frame. Is that important? Well, if you're an editor, that might be. The great thing about the Story Editor is as fast as I type, as fast as I edit, it keeps up with me. The other thing is if I make a change to the Story Editor, it updates automatically in the background. For example, here's that word, dollar. If I change this to yen, in a moment you'll see it update in the background. I can jump out of Story Editor and back to my document window simply by closing the window by clicking on the Close button, but here's what I like to do. Select a word within the Story Editor window and then press Command-Y or Control-Y again, and it will take you back to the document window and select the same word here. Watch this. When you use Command-Y on the Mac or Control-Y on Windows, it always synchronizes the selection between the Story Editor window and the document window. Let's try that again. I'll do a Command-Y on the Mac or Control-Y on Windows. I'll scroll down to another part of the story. I'll select a word and press the keyboard shortcut again. And here, it takes me right to that word in that heading. Here's another great thing about the Story Editor. I'll go back to the Story Editor window with the keyboard shortcut, and I'll scroll to the very bottom of the article. And let's say I'm going to keep typing here. As I type, I'll just type some random text here. You'll see a red line appear. What does that mean? That means this text is overset. I can see immediately not just how much is overset, but what the actual words are that are overset past what will fit in the text frame. This is extremely useful when I'm trying to edit to fit a particular size of frame. Whether you're editing really tiny 4-point text at the bottom of a legal contract, or text on a path, or a long story, the Story Editor makes life so much easier. By the way, Adobe has a supercharged Story Editor too. It's a separate product called InCopy, and it's a word processor that works alongside InDesign. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a later chapter, and there's a whole essential training title on InCopy. Check it out. Nobody spells everything right all the time. I mean, hey, that's what spell checking features are for. And fortunately, there's a quite good one built in InDesign. I have the Javaco marketing sheet here for the Dragonwell T open in front of me. This is from the exercise files, and it looks pretty good, but before I send it to print, I better check the spelling. Here's how I do it. I go up to the Edit menu, and choose from the Spelling submenu, Check Spelling. Or much easier. Just press Command-I on Mac or Control-I on Windows. It immediately opens the check spelling panel and starts looking for words that are misspelled. Let me move this out of the way so we can see better. The word Ching is not in my dictionary, but I think that's probably spelled right, so I'm going to go ahead and skip that. There's an interesting word. It says that word's misspelled, but it gives me suggested corrections. I'm going to guess that this is probably what I meant to spell. And then I'll click Change. Dragonwell is the name of the tea, but it's not in the dictionary. Well, that's okay, I know that's spelled properly. I'm going to click Ignore All. When you press Ignore All, you're telling InDesign to not check this word until you quit InDesign and restart again. It will just completely ignore that, but it won't actually add it to its own built-in dictionary. Now here's something different that the check spelling will find. It says there's a repeated word. It found two words next to each other. It says, is that what you want? No, that's not what I want, so I'm going to click on the suggested correction and click Change. Here's another thing that InDesign's check spelling can find, a word that's not capitalized properly. It's spelled lowercase but, but it's supposed to be uppercase but because it's the beginning of the sentence. So I better click that and change that as well. There's that word Ching again. I'm going to add this to my dictionary this time so that it never shows up in my check spelling again. To do that, I can choose which dictionary I want to add it to. In this case, it's my English dictionary, and just click the word Add. Okay, I think you get the idea of how the check spelling panel works. I'll click Done to stop this, and I want to show you another spell checking feature in InDesign, which I think is just really cool. I'll go to the Edit menu again, and go to Spelling, and I'm going to turn on Dynamic Spelling. I love the dynamic spelling feature, and I have it turned on most of the time, because when it's on, it'll show me all the words that it thinks are misspelled. It underlines them with red. For example, here, when you zoom in on this, I selected this with my Type tool, and I'll press Command-4 or Control-4 on Windows to jump into 400%, and now you can see, it thinks those words are misspelled. Well, I don't think those are misspelled, I think they're just French, and I'm using the English dictionary. Fortunately, InDesign has many dictionaries built into it, something like 15 different languages, but I need to tell InDesign what this language is supposed to be. So I'm going to select this text and go up to the control panel, and note that this only works when the control panel is in character mode, not paragraph mode. We'll be covering the control panel and the difference between character and paragraph formatting later, but suffice it to say, when you're in character mode, I can change my language pop-up menu from English to French. Suddenly, InDesign says, hey, those words aren't misspelled after all. The other thing you should know about dynamic spelling is, let's say I purposely misspelled something here. I'll click off it, and you see that it immediately updates and it says, that's misspelled, something's wrong with that. If I right-click on it, right mouse button click, or if you have a one-button mouse on a Macintosh, you control-click, you get a list of all the words that it thinks that word might be from the context menu. That's pretty cool. I can also say, let's go ahead and add that to the user dictionary. I'm not going to do that, of course, right now. I'm just going to say, use the proper spelling. There's one more spell checking area in InDesign that I need to point out to you, and that's in the Preferences dialog box. On the Macintosh, you choose Preferences from the InDesign menu, and on Windows, you choose Preferences from the Edit menu. We'll go right to the spelling panel of the Preferences dialog box, and you can see how much control you have here. Find your misspelled words or repeated words and so on. You also have control over your dynamic spelling, like what color are you going to get for those underlines. Of course, just performing a spell check won't guarantee your text is all correct, so finding a proofreader is always a good idea. But InDesign's spell check feature is definitely worth running too. I don't know about you, but I make a lot of typos when I'm typing quickly. That's why I like InDesign's Autocorrect feature, which watches what I type and fixes common mistakes. Let me show you what I mean, and then I'll show you how to control it. The first thing I need to do is turn it on. From the Edit menu, go down to Spelling, and in the Spelling submenu, choose Autocorrect. That simply turns it on. Now I'm going to do some typing in this text frame down here, so I'll double-click at the end of this paragraph. That converts to the Type tool and places the cursor. I'll type Command-4 or Control-4 on Windows to jump to 400% so I can see the text better. Now I'm going to start typing. Let's say the sentence begins with the. Did you see what happened? I typed T-E-H instead of T-H-E. Let me show you again. T-E-H, and as soon as I press the space bar, InDesign sees that it was misspelled and changes it. InDesign doesn't do this for all misspelled words, only ones that are part of an autocorrect list. I'll show you that list now. It's in the Preferences dialog box. So on the Macintosh, we go to the InDesign menu and choose Preferences, and on Windows, you find the Preferences submenu under the Edit menu. So we'll go down to Autocorrect. That opens the Autocorrect panel of the Preferences dialog box. And you can see that I've created a list here of words that I often misspell, like the word InDesign. I type that one a lot. Let's make a new Autocorrect instance. I click the Add button, and I add a word that I might misspell. Let's say I misspell the word T-A-E. Now I'll type it the way it should be, T-E-A. I'll click OK, and it adds it to my list. Now when I click OK, I can try typing T-A-E. Again, I hit the spacebar to let InDesign know that I'm done typing that word, and it updates automatically. Here's another way that Autocorrect is useful. I'll scroll over just a little bit so I can see more of my line to type in, and I'll go back to the Preferences dialog box. You can get there faster by just pressing Command-K on a Mac or Control-K on Windows, and then I'll click the Autocorrect panel to see my list. Now I'm just going to type DW in a misspelled word, and I'm going to type a longer word or phrase here, so I'll say Dragonwell T as the correction. I'll click OK, and I'll make sure that Autocorrect capitalization errors is turned on. That way the word will always be capitalized properly. I'll click OK, and now when I say I want to type the Dragonwell T, I just type DW, press space, and it expands. To be honest, I don't usually like it when programs try to be smarter than me, but in this case I'm willing to make an exception. This autocorrect feature has saved me so much time, I am now truly grateful for it.